Hello, everybody. Today we're discussing the brand new MCP integration within the Databricks Marketplace. We're going to have a look at how it looks like and then how you can build agents around it. And to discuss this, we have Elise Gonzales today. So, Elise, can you introduce yourself?
Yes. Thank you, Maria. My name's Elise. I'm a product manager here at Databricks. I look over our Agent Bricks product and our MCP catalog and marketplace. So really excited to be here today.
Amazing. And so to discuss first the MCP and what it means for Databricks, can you tell us a little bit about the end-to-end MCP story on Databricks, what it means for us?
Yeah, great question. So we've been investing in MCP for a few months now. So at Data and AI Summit, we came out with a couple of managed servers to help you connect your data to various agents and various clients that you're building. Specifically, we have Genie for structured data. Then we have vector search and UC functions for unstructured data. So all of that is sort of managed for you. You don't have to worry about standing up servers, worrying about authentication. All of that's handled on your behalf. We've now recently extended that into managing what we call external MCP servers. So those could be internal to your company. It could be third parties like imagine GitHub or some of our launch partners like U.com. And so that way you have a central place to discover all of those. You can govern the servers, make sure you are passing through authentication appropriately. And then we've also extended that now into the marketplace, mainly to help people discover different servers that are out there. It turns out there are new servers coming up every day. We had, I want to say like 20 launch partners, and we're going to continue to onboard them. And so it's hard to keep up with all the news and all of the recent updates from different companies. So we want to make that a really fast path for people to be able to add those and then be able to build agents really easily.
Amazing. Should we see how it looks and feels like, just so that everyone is on the same page?
Yeah, of course. So let me share my screen here. So we're going to hop into the Databricks platform. And so the place I'm going to start is over here in our Agents tab. So this is where we introduced our Agent Bricks product here, but we now as well have a new tab for MCP servers. So what this lets you do is first you can discover, so you can learn how to create tools within Databricks, but you can also discover some of our marketplace offerings. So U.com, Glean, we have SMP, we also have FactSet. So a great way to connect data and other tools to your agents. And then you can see all of the ones that you have access to as well. So I have a variety available in here. So I have a vector search index, and so that lets me do my unstructured data. And so if I actually click on one of these, you can see as well any of the tools that you have available. So I have a couple of different indexes in this schema, and I can see the description here. So we provide an out-of-the-box description based on what you provided in your Unity catalog and give you some of the parameters here. If I go back and look at one of my external ones as well, you can also see all of the different tools that are available. So in this U.com case, this is a web search tool. So I can see I have a search tool, I have an express tool for fast AI answers, as well as a content tool in here. And I am actually the owner of this one. It's an external API. And then this description was actually provided directly by U.com. And so then if I actually jump back, and so if I want to see all of the available MCP servers in our marketplace, I can jump right in from our MCP servers tab. And so we actually now have a brand new filter under here. So you can see both models under AI, but as well as MCP servers. And then I can select any number of these. So we have a number of different partners here, from LSEG for news and other data. We have SMP as well, which also gets you great financial data. We have Tavily, which is another sort of web search tool in here. We have FactSet, we have U.com, Glean as well. So you have a variety of different servers that you can choose from, add to your catalog, and also grant other people permission as well in your organization. So that way you don't have a proliferation of different MCP servers, and you can provide the right level of governance as well as discoverability on top of them.
Well, I had a question from a customer, actually. So if I am on Databricks and my other partner is on Databricks, and we both have MCP servers, does the fact that we're both on Databricks allows us to have any competitive advantage there, or no?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I would say, one, definitely the advantage there is you can take full advantage of the servers that we have out of the box. So again, if you do have vector search or Genie, or if you are getting data Delta shared in, it's really easy to create a Genie space for it. And then you can use that over MCP. It's certainly a super popular pattern for a lot of folks. Or you can also build your own agents. And if you do build and deploy an MCP server with Databricks, so you can do that with our Databricks Apps product, you could as well grant, say, your partner access to that MCP server, and all of that authentication again can be handled by Databricks. That is something that I hear is often some folks behind the scenes will have OAuth support, but sometimes they won't. So a lot of the time you may need to go and upgrade your services. So if you do just want to wrap them and sort of deploy that as a Databricks app, we'll handle all of the OAuth for you. And so that can be a piece while you are going and sort of migrating some of the backend pieces, you can leverage that directly. So I would say there is definitely some advantage to being on Databricks. You could either do Delta sharing, or you could build and deploy an MCP server and then share it with your partner that way.
And just to make sure I understand, so you have Databricks-managed MCP servers, which were created by Databricks. So for vector search mentioned, you see, and there was another one, which was
Genie. Yeah, our text to SQL agent. Yeah.
And the difference here is that on the marketplace, instead of having Databricks do one by one MCP for every partner, you let the partners build their own MCP servers and register them in the marketplace. And what we
That's
were
exactly right.
showing earlier with the external API MCP server, that's once you go into this marketplace, you take it and then you register it in your governance tool and Unity catalog.
Yep,
Got it.
that's exactly right. So before I had already done this, so you didn't have to watch me set it up, but I had already gone into u.com here. And what's nice is you can see an overview. You can get a free API key, for example, from u.com to be able to test it out. And then you can go and directly install it. So we let you provide a connection name. We actually fill in a bunch of this information for you. Once you get that API key from u.com, you can provide that in here, and then you can install it directly into your catalog. And then the super nice thing is you can also then go and play and sort of experiment, and then as well build agents. So if I were to go into our playground experience here and use something like GPT-5.1, I can go and add any of the MCP servers that I have available. So any of the Databricks managed ones, any external ones. So like I mentioned, I do have u.com search here. Or if I'm hosting an MCP server myself via Databricks Apps, I could add that one as well. And so I can directly add a tool in here. And so I could say something like search the web for information about Databricks. And that way I can verify that my connection is working, that the MCP server is behaving as expected. And so in this case, I have a free API key. And so their agent API requires a higher level API key. And so what it will do is it will try again with our web search tool here. So what this lets you do is sort of test your connection, be able to test and make sure that it is working. But we also then behind the scenes handle that authentication piece for you. And so if I go back into my MCP servers tab here and actually let's look at u.com. So we did provide that connection information directly in when I was going and installing that from the marketplace, but we give you a proxy here. And the nice thing about the proxy is that means that you can we handle all of that authentication for you. We securely store that token in Unity catalog. We can do token exchange, make sure it's refreshed. So that actually helps reduce the number of logins that someone has to do as they're leveraging this agent. But it also really keeps it very, very secure. That token's never exposed. It's not something you ever have to deal with. And so we're trying to make, as silly as it sounds, we're trying to make the authentication piece as boring as possible, as easy as possible, because that is often what we're seeing people are struggling with as they're building agents is not necessarily some of the agent itself, but some of those underlying components like Auth, when you really need to make sure that works for your enterprise at scale.
Interesting.
This is great. I had built something using the agent, the OpenAI agent SDK connecting to Databricks managed MCP servers, and it was so easy, literally just a few lines of code.
I love hearing that.
It's really exciting to see that now it's not just those managed MCP servers. There's so much more in the marketplace. Pretty cool.
Yeah.
And so Elise, so you set up the connection for one MCP server, and then through Unity Catalog, you can expose the MCP server to the right group of users that I care that they
Exactly.
are allowed. Okay. So the same permission model applies.
That's right. And if the tool supports OAuth, we do actually do that token exchange as well. So that really gives you two layers of governance where you can, when you are setting up the connection, and I won't do this directly, but let me show you. When you are setting up the connection, you can specify the, let's say, test here. I'm going to put in HTTP and I'm going to put in per user. So this would mean that I am going to essentially pass through my token as Elise to whatever downstream system I'm going to use here. The nice thing is you can as well provide OAuth scopes. And so that means that in some cases, maybe an MCP server has a number of tools, including some write operations you may not want someone to do. You could set it up and really scope down that connection so that maybe it only does read, or it only has sort of a specific number or a specific set of APIs it's allowed to access. You then grant people permission on top of this. And so that gives you sort of an additional layer of governance. And then we do pass through that identity all the way down to that downstream system. So not only do you get to provide access on top of this, you get to downscope to what APIs you want to support. And then as well, we pass the identity to make sure it's the same person on the other side as well. So that really makes sure you're sort of threading it through and also providing the right level of control as an enterprise. And as you're especially figuring out what you want to do with MCP and what you sort of want to allow and not allow agents to be able to do.
That is amazing. Like the fact that you, per MCP level, per MCP server, you can choose the number of tools or which users can access to and what they can hit, basically. So which API they can hit. Very nice. Okay.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
I also love the fact that they're discoverable through the marketplace. Imagine, like, how does that solve the whole discoverability problem to put all those MCP servers on the marketplace? Imagine to avoid having teams rebuilding the same servers again and again.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I talked to a customer a couple weeks ago, and they had two separate teams build the exact same MCP server to one of the tools that they provide. And it turns out that tool actually also provides its own MCP server. So there were sort of three already floating around in the organization. And as you can imagine, more and more of these will become available from different providers. And so you want to make sure you're sort of getting it from the source. And so having our trusted partners be able to list their marketplace MCP servers and offer them that way, you know that it's sort of the certified one from FactSet or from SMP. And so that way you can sort of have that verification. It's directly from them. They're managing that for you. And so you can add that to your catalog directly. And then the final piece here as well is that we can and do actually connect these into our Agent Bricks product. And so, as I mentioned right here under agents, we're just going to skip that because I wasn't really adding a connection in here. We do have a number of different agents that you can build. And so with our multi-agent supervisor here, you can as well add MCP servers. And so you can add, we have our Unity catalog functions. Again, we have Genie, but then you can add external MCP servers here. And so any of those that I have available, including u.com or Tably or GitHub, for example, I can add into Agent Bricks and then build out an agent that way. And so I actually already have one built just to sort of expedite this. I have a sort of Candy research bot here. And what this does is it has multiple different sources where I have finance data, I have manufacturing data, I have some recent news articles, I have some market research of social posts and reviews, but then I also have my web search tool in here. And so I can sort of combine all of the first-party data that I have from my finance and market manufacturing data. I could combine some recent news as well as combine any of those sort of external tools as well. So if I did want to go and ask a question, using my copy and paste program here so you don't have to watch me type, I can start to string together some of these agents. So I can ask something like, who is our chocolate supplier? Can you bring up some recent information about them? I just want to make sure as we're going into the holiday season that we should be okay on our chocolate manufacturer. And so it's going to reach out first to my finance agent here and ask our chocolate supplier. And so we can see here that my cocoa butter and cocoa mass are both provided by Lindt. And one comes from the United States, one comes from Switzerland, for example. And so what it's going to do is then it's giving me a little bit of a summary there. And then it's also reaching out with my web search tool to query about Lindt and see if there's any sort of recent information or anything I should be worried about or know about. And so then it starts to summarize that for me. So I can see some of their annual sales. I can see one of the few chocolate manufacturers producing from bean to bar, for example, and that their market position, they're recognized as a leader. So I should be totally okay relying on them, especially going into this holiday season. So this really lets you start to bring together both that first-party data that you have in Databricks, any external MCP servers that you have, and any tools you want to leverage, and really sort of bring all of that together into a managed experience here in Agent Bricks.
Nice. And then the next question is basically on the options that the supervisor here has. Is there any plan for the future for Databricks to create its own tools that come out of the box? Think of this now, for example, you attach the MCP server for you.com. What if Databricks has their own web search tool? Is this something in the pipeline?
Yeah, good question. So it's definitely something that we've debated. I think it is really convenient often to have a web search tool, but a lot of enterprises do want control over where their data is going and to whom that data is being provided. And so right now we don't have plans for like an out of the box web search tool. We are providing a lot of our sort of both unstructured and structured data through tools with MCP. But right now we don't have any plans for sort of other out of the box tools just yet, but those may be on the horizon in the future.
Just to clarify for those who are not familiar with Databricks, when we talk about this Agent Bricks multi-agent supervisor, we're talking about this typical architecture where you have a triage agent and then specialized sub-agent. Got it. Just clarify,
Yeah.
making sure I understand.
Yeah. Good clarification. Yeah, that's exactly right. So you do have a supervisor here, and the supervisor has access to all of the descriptions here, so it kind of understands what all of those agents are responsible for. And the other thing that we do provide here as well is we do thread through, again, that authentication. And so you do need access to each of the sub-agents underneath, because we do have a number of cases where people are building out a supervisor and they may have different domains of data that some people may have access to some of them, some people may have access to others of them. And so the supervisor can and does know what your access is in Unity Catalog, for example, and then can thread that through and make sure you're only talking to the agents that you have access to. And it can dynamically choose those as questions come up. And so it does try to pick the best path. But you can as well influence the supervisor's behavior by going into improve quality, for example. And so I do already have an example in here where when I ask something like, what's the customer sentiment about our candies? What are the 3 highest performing flavors? I want it to do a couple of things where I want it to look for the highest possible sentiment, be sure to factor in the quantity of reviews, but also consider both market research and financial performance. So in that case, I want it to leverage both of those sub-agents when it's looking at customer sentiment and highest performance. So you can both influence the behavior, but the supervisor as well, using the descriptions and all the information it has, can choose the best path to be able to answer your question. So it kind of gives you, I would say, the best of both worlds. Sometimes people really want to build out a workflow, and in that way that you can improve quality and sort of give it a little bit more deterministic behavior, but it can also choose as it gets maybe a question you didn't anticipate, it can choose the best path to go and answer that for the person using that agent.
So Elise, what do you think is the right persona for the user who is tuning the system or building the system versus the user who is consuming or giving feedback to this system?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So often what we see is as much as you want sort of building an agent to maybe be a solo adventure, it's often really collaborative in nature. So oftentimes what we see is it's potentially a data engineer or software engineer who's building out and sort of configuring the supervisor or any of our other agent bricks in this case. And so they're a little bit more technical. And so as you need to potentially hook it up to a front end experience, or you need to ingest data in order to power the agent, they're really capable of doing that. But often they're not the domain expert. And so they do need a way to collaborate with those domain experts. And so that's where the integration with MLflow comes in our agent evaluation product. So I actually, in this experience, I have an example question, and then we do as well spin up a labeling session for you. So in this example, I could open my labeling session. And what a labeling session lets me do is have a number of different examples that I want my SMEs to provide feedback on. And so if I'm not the domain expert, but I am sort of the developer of the agent, I can grant them permissions and let them use this labeling session to provide guidelines and provide their expertise without them necessarily having to be a developer, having to get down into the code and sort of modify the prompt themselves. This gives them a really easy way to go and do that. And then it gives you a much faster path to that collaboration, because at the end of the day, as much as you want to build this on your own, you do need to collaborate with your coworkers. And so we want to make that path really easy for you.
We have done another deep dive on the agent evaluation framework with MLflow, like deep dive on the customization and technical capabilities of this, but it is exactly the same tool. So the integration is perfect. And then from my experience, I haven't seen any Gen AI use case moving unless the SME is involved in the process, right? So this gives you the opportunity to involve the people who are going to use it and tune the system to their needs and the ways of their working, right? So you need to make it as simple and relevant to them as possible.
That's exactly right.
Another question I had is how do you handle the cost observability part of those agents and before and after they're in production?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So that is something that a lot of our customers ask about, particularly as they start to figure out and build agents. And that is what we consider as we think about Agent Bricks is often as much as every use case matters, not every use case is worth the same amount. And so we do help you sort of make that decision of, for this, do I want to sort of cost optimize? Do I want to quality optimize and maybe use a much better sort of state of the art model in that case? And then as well, we do record all of our cost information into what we call our system tables. So you can see individually how much each agent is costing you. And then if you leverage our AI Gateway product as well, and you sort of filter all of your LLM calls through that, we do record all of the tokens that you're using. So that way, if you are using a variety of different providers, each of them has a little bit of a different cost model, a little bit of a different per token. And so you can as well observe the sort of external calls that way. And so we do try to let you do all of that analysis within Databricks itself.
Do you think how the AI gateway could mature or grow in a more agentic world? Because now it's mostly for tracking inputs, outputs when you're hitting LLMs, but what about agents?
Yeah, I definitely think that's going to be the next frontier here. And a lot of what we're seeing is beyond just MCP. How do people start to observe and potentially govern agents that are built in different platforms? And obviously, I'm the PM of building agents in Databricks, but I know that people will inevitably build them elsewhere as well. And so, how do you have that single pane of glass where you can look not only at LLMs, but also at MCP tools? You need to be able to then look at agents as well and sort of see how they're interacting, make sure that you have the right access level to them, provide observability, even provide fallbacks, right? So imagine that you have an agent that suddenly stops working, maybe an API key expires. What happens in that case? You don't just want your users to all suddenly get errors and then you to get 400 tickets. So how do you start to provide fallbacks and smart other options there? So I definitely think we want to start evolving in that direction and make sure that you can start to bring agents into the experience as well.
What about the business users and how they interact and consume this kind of agents? Think about our Databricks One experience, or how, from your experience, what is the best way for business users to interact with our system? And I would also add, for companies where they want to white label their platform, do we have anything there?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I would say a lot of what folks are doing right now is they are leveraging our Databricks Apps product. And so that is a really easy way to build a front end experience, sort of fully manage an app container essentially for you. And we do have a number of templates. And we did just publish a brand new one that uses, I would say, some really nice UI components from Vercel and from some other providers to give you a managed front end experience that you can plug either a custom code agent into or any of the Agent Bricks endpoints into. But actually, a number of companies have already started to invest and build out their own sort of internal chat experience. And so as they have that branded experience, we give you that endpoint. And so it's essentially just an API that you can call. It follows the OpenAI responses format. And so we give you a lot of information in return. And so you can see all the tool calls, you can see any thinking, you can see as well and do streaming so that you get that interactivity for the user. So we are actually seeing quite a few companies have already invested in that front end experience and starting to bring those agents together. But as we look to evolve Databricks One, we are looking to evolve it so that it does come with a chat experience out of the box. And so Databricks One is our sort of business or front end experience where maybe you don't want them to go into the workspace and be able to create a notebook or even create their own agent. Do they have an experience where they can look at dashboards? Right now, they can talk to Genie spaces, but we also want them to be able to talk to agents that are built in Databricks as well and sort of manage some of that front end for you. But in some cases, companies want to do that all themselves. And so we give you that endpoint, and so you can integrate that one directly as well.
True. All of our products or artifacts are API driven, so you can integrate it with any of your systems. Yes, sounds good.
Totally right.
And in the future, do you see a world where really business users can set up those agents? Because to me, for example, we're talking about MCP today. There's so many things that can go wrong when you set up an MCP server. For example, if you put too many tools, etc., really high latency. So it seems like right now, as you said earlier, it's good to have a software engineer or data engineer setting up the scaffolding, let's say, just to make sure that the right primitives are in place. And then you need the SMEs to actually test to make sure that it will solve the business problem. But do you think we'll get to a point where business users can just, say, I want this agent, and then it magically appears?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And I think it's something we're sort of debating ourselves as well. So I think right now, given all of I don't want to say like the tools are super primitive, but just like you said, if you add too many tools, if you give it too much context, if you don't give it enough context, there's a lot that can go wrong. And then you do need to as well sort of invest in the evaluation. You need to invest in productionization and operationalizing. Oh goodness, I'm like losing that word here. But you do need to invest in a number of pieces there. And so often what I'll ask is like, okay, let's imagine a business user develops an agent and a number of teams start using it. Who's responsible for it? What happens when something goes wrong? I think that can often, I think people do personal agents a lot. Like I know I've certainly developed a few to help me with my own productivity, which means if it breaks, it's just on me to go and fix it. But once other teams start to rely on it, I think you really have to think about what happens if something goes wrong. What if that person goes on vacation? And often I would say engineering teams, data engineering teams are well prepared. They have an on-call rotation. They have some of these skills already developed. So I would say in terms of like an experience, we're starting to potentially evolve in that direction. But as companies really think about the implications of these, we're still finding they're often owned by that technical team because there's still so much maintenance and upkeep and what happens when things go wrong that business teams just may not be prepared for.
It's not a dream yet, right? So we haven't
Yeah.
reached the point where everything works out of the box. At least for now, it needs tweaking, understanding of the data, the use case, on the users as well. So yeah.
Yeah. Who has access to what? Does the data really does it really give you the answers that you're expecting it to? Has the SME sort of verified things? And so I would say maybe eventually we'll get to that point where agents can and should be developed by business users. But I think if you think about it in the fullness of time, we could potentially get there. But if you're going to productionize it, often I think a technical team does need to be involved to really manage that after it goes into production and people are really relying on it day to day.
And so with all of this MCP wave and everyone is like interacting with these servers and tools, is there a plan in the future or a vision where a developer, me as a developer, think I can interact with the Databricks platform as a developer through MCP servers?
Yeah, that's something we also hear a lot from folks, is particularly as they're starting to do data engineering, they're leveraging something like Cursor or they're leveraging Claude Code, and they really want to do that within their IDE. For example, they do want to connect to Databricks that way. So I did misspeak earlier. We did just introduce another MCP server here for dbSQL. And so that one is really intended to be that sort of IDE usage. And so that is where we're seeing a lot of customers leverage that is if you're developing a pipeline, if you're developing views, for example, you can use that dbSQL MCP server for that. So we are starting to develop some tools there as well, but we are looking to develop more in the platform too. So recently we introduced our data science agent. And so it can go through and look at your data, help you develop a notebook for a new model. And so we are looking as well at something like a data engineering agent there. And so we are starting to look at offering more of those tools as well.
Yes, we have another demo on the data science agent. We will link that too.
Oh, perfect.
And yes, we discussed the MCP Marketplace. What about an agentic version of this where there is an agent marketplace and I can see all the agents that I have available and even external agents being registered and seen, reused and controlled through that space?
Yeah, I would say it definitely is evolving in that direction. So some of the agent or some of the MCP servers you'll see are actually agents under the hood rather than simply just tools. So I would say the jury is still out on what the sort of agent to agent communication is going to be. There's a couple, there's obviously A to A, there's ACP. Some folks are using MCP to provide access to their agents. And so we are really working with our customers there and kind of seeing what they need, seeing where the market goes. And so some of the listings that you see today are actually agents under the hood. And so we may
Yes.
leverage MCP there, but we may also start to offer other protocols as those become more popular, and then also let you sort of connect those through our marketplace as well.
Is this something that you are asking for feedback from our customers and people watching?
I am. Yeah. So I do talk to our customers quite
Wow.
a bit. And often they're asking us for our opinion and being like, where are you all going? And we're like, what are you interested in? So I think it's still pretty early. It's kind of like this time last year, everyone was like, what are we doing for tools? How do we standardize
Yeah.
tools? And then sort of all of a sudden, MCP came out of, honestly, it felt like left field and really took off in popularity. That's kind of, it feels like what everything in AI happens, is it almost happens overnight. And so kind of waiting and seeing and talking to our customers and figuring out what works for them. The nice thing about MCP is it does provide a lot of simplicity. And so that's what engineers have really loved about it, is it's a really simple protocol to understand. They started out with just a few definitions in there. They've obviously evolved it quite a bit to include authentication now. They're now introducing a registry concept. And so we will in the future as well look to integrate with the registry, but they just solidified that. So it's just now evolving. And so we kind of expect to keep evolving this space as we see new technologies, as new patterns emerge.
Amazing. And I have one last question. And
Of course.
since this channel has been called the epitome of OpenAI and Databricks collaboration, I wanted to ask, I'm also advocating for, I love AI, but I want AI to be used where the users are and meet the users where they are to increase consumption of the systems and feedback. What is the best way of working with MCPs and OpenAI ChatGPT Enterprise?
Yeah, we actually have been working with OpenAI directly there. So when we first introduced the managed MCP servers, we did not have a dynamic client registration because a lot of our enterprises don't allow that. It's not as secure as providing like a static client ID and client secret. And so we have worked directly with OpenAI, and they did recently evolve the MCP offer so that you can put in a client ID and client secret. And so that is a direct collaboration we have. Also talking about, I know that the deep research capabilities are right now, they require very specific tools. And so that restriction is going to get lifted. So you can use vector search and Genie there soon. So this is a collaboration we have directly where we, I think, have a really good sense of what enterprise customers want. OpenAI is really good at what the consumer experience looks like and how your
Mhm.
business user can use it. And so we're doing, I would say, hopefully a really good job of marrying those two together and make sure we sort of meet in the middle for an experience people really like. And so that is something that we worked on very, very recently, and I believe just shipped. And then the deep research changes will be coming soon.
Yeah, I think the limitation at the beginning was that OpenAI MCP servers were limited to fetch and something else, which meant that
Search.
you couldn't. Yes, so there was a workaround, but it was a bit clunky, and so now it works out of the box, which
Yeah.
is amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. And it made sense too, because I think at first everyone was a little cautious about what tools you should provide and how you want to provide those. And that sort of, as we've seen people adopt this, and as we've seen, honestly, a lot of the security and authentication evolve in MCP, I think it can be a little more trusted now. And so you've lifted some of those restrictions. We've actually been, both sides of our engineering have been working together to make sure that the MCP servers that we have can be accessed in ChatGPT Enterprise.
And basically what it means is that I can go to my ChatGPT Enterprise, attach the MCP service, and I can interact now with the data that are on Databricks, which is beautiful.
Yeah, exactly.
And even if you're, for example, I don't know, working in a marketing team and, you're not typically a Databricks user necessarily, then you can still leverage Databricks under the hood and all the insights from the data on Databricks, but still respecting the governance that is set up in Databricks, which is what I think is great because you can expand the the number of people in your company that can benefit from those data insights. Really cool.
Exactly right. And you don't have to be a SQL expert at that point, right? You can use natural language, you can interact with the data that way, but you can still make sure that it is a trusted data source, that someone's actually gone and verified it, and that you actually have access to it. And so I think the marrying of those two makes for a lot of power and puts a lot of the power in that business user's hand, even if they don't have, let's say, SQL expertise.
Amazing, Elise. Is there anything else on your side you want to say?
I don't think so. I feel like we covered everything.
Mhm.
I mean, I think the space is always evolving, so I'm always really excited to see where it goes from here. But I'm also really excited for what we have and looking to evolve it with customers. So really appreciated talking to you all about it today.
Amazing. Thanks, Elise.
Thanks, Elise.
Thank you.